So while we're waiting for a few of you to join, that's funny, it gave me a notice that I'm going live. Thank you, Instagram.
Good to know.
Hey guys, so this is Kayla here, as you know, and I am here with Zach from the Fit Mess podcast. I was a guest on his podcast a while back. I'm sure he's going to be a guest on the Biocurious podcast sometime in the future. And we are meeting up here in Atlanta because he's here from New York for a conference. And we thought it'd be cool to meet up. And we were just having like a really fun conversation all about mindset and different practices around mindset. And we're like, hey, why don't we go live and talk to our friends on Instagram about this and also see like what you guys think about all of this. But Zach, you want to give your background? Who are you? What's the Fit Mess podcast?
So the Fit Mess is Fit Mess is just two guys, myself and my buddy Jeremy, and we're trying to make small changes in our lives to just be a better person all around. Small changes like biohacking.
Yeah.
I mean, it's little things like getting better sleep or the right supplements, and being mindful of our emotions and being vulnerable and things like that. Just little things to make ourselves better and to be better people, to be better parents, to be better friends, to be better spouses, just overall better. So
yeah.
And then we bring on experts because we're not experts. We generally just get on and complain about our lives and what we're doing to make it better, and we bring on an expert who actually knows what they're talking about, which is why we had you on our show.
Thank you. I like to be called an expert occasionally. I think that's kind of fun. You don't ever think of yourself as an expert, I think, but
you are. You came on our show. You're an expert.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm glad that qualifies me as an expert too. That's nice. So our podcasts are very similar. We talk about health and wellness, how to improve yourself, how to improve your life, how to improve your health by doing different things like biohacking. And just like you guys, I also bring on experts in the field who can come in and talk about their specific areas of expertise and teach us all about their magic and how they do it the best so that we can learn from what they do. Yeah. But we were just talking about kind of the power of vulnerability and mindset. And so we were talking about our background. We both had a similar upbringing of, instability and issues with family, as, many people do. I'm sure some of you have the same upbringing and situation. But we were also talking about like the resilience factor, because it seems that, both of us have been able to come out of a insecure family setting and make successful lives, I guess, to someone's standards. I think to our standards we are. We
made something out of it.
Yeah, so it's kind of like turning those negative experiences into something positive. And so I think that is something that's really valuable. I think being able to be resilient, part of that is not only like physical resilience, and we often as biohackers talk about longevity, but it has to do with mental resilience. And so I think sometimes when you go through a lot of challenges, like childhood challenges or insecurity, you come out the other end stronger. And in some ways you have traumas linked to this, but in some ways it makes you more resilient. So yeah, what do you think are like some of the ways that people can increase their resilience or improve their mindset?
Well, increasing my resilience was learned through all of my childhood and all the negative things that happened. So I don't recommend that approach.
Yeah, don't do that one if you can avoid it.
That one would be bad. I think that putting things into perspective, and if you're upset over something, if something's really bothering you, how important is that in the grand scheme of things, right? Yeah. Is it a first world problem, right? Is it something that's going to hurt somebody? Is it how truly important is it, and are you blowing things out of proportion? Are you making a mountain out of a molehill? I think in my mind, I see other people with issues or problems, and they're very upset by them, and that kind of stuff wouldn't upset me. I'm more concerned about being upset about the things that are truly important to be upset about.
So it's kind of like the reframe, and some people call it like the pivot. It's about rethinking the situation to understand what truly is the worst thing that can happen here, or like what I call it also is like the zoom out. If you can zoom out from being stuck in the weeds, and you're being very small when you're stuck in the weeds. You're small, you're down in the dirt, you're in the weeds, you can't see the next step in front of you because there's so many weeds all around, and it's just like you can't find your way out. But if you're able to grow bigger and zoom way out, then you can see like clearly what you're looking for is not that far away. It's just a little bit down the path, and it's going to be okay. Like you're going to get there.
You are, but I think the key is the mindset and putting that pause button in there, right? Because we all have that immediate reaction to something, and you have to be able to pause and say, wait a minute, hang on, and step back and look at it from a distance.
Yeah, I think for me that's what meditation has taught me. Putting the pause button on, it means that you can build the space between stimulus and reaction. And when you can build that mental space, then you have the ability to press the pause button instead of just being reactive. And then going straight down into that place of negative emotions. And I talk a lot to people. It's like my immediate family members, that I try to get them to see, like, if you have a negative experience or like something bad happens to you that puts you in that fight or flight mode, that sympathetic nervous system is activated, and that, let's say that happens first thing in the morning, like you got an email from your boss and you woke up and you checked the email and it was like this thing, your boss is mad at you or whatever, and then automatically you start your day in that fight or flight mode, and you go down this kind of negative thinking pathway, and unless you're able to pull yourself out of it, you keep going. So later on, maybe an hour later, you think about that email and you feel all the emotions as if it's happening again, even though you're just thinking it. Your brain doesn't know the difference between thinking about something and it actually happening when you recreate those emotions and those feelings, and then all the physiological effects happen. But the good news is the same thing happens with a positive experience. So your brain doesn't know the difference between a positive thing happening and thinking about a positive thing happening, because you get that same positive physiological response. So if you can realize, okay, I'm having like you can feel it physically, and if you can bring your attention, like when you start to have all the feelings of stress, we all know what that feels like. Our face gets hot, our heart rate goes up, we start to get panicked, our breath shortens, we start to get monkey mind, like going down the rabbit hole of all the worst possible things that could happen. And when we start feeling these things, if we can bring our attention to it and say, hold on, first of all, I don't want to feel this way. It doesn't feel good. What can I think about right now?
Of these things, it can totally change the tide of your day.
Absolutely. The power of breath, I've always known that it's powerful. And, I know from a scientific standpoint how beneficial it is if you put your attention to your breath. But it wasn't until Iceland, where we were practicing breath work every day for an extended period of time, that I realized how crazy impactful the breath is, and how you can basically heal anything in your body just using the breath.
Did you guys work on the Wim Hof method? We
did Wim Hof breathing. We did other intermittent hypoxic breath work. We did breath work with music, with Noah Aon, the biohacking DJ, and we did breath work with a different Wim Hof instructor. And it was amazing to see how all the participants who were there in Iceland for the biohacking experience everybody had huge transformations, including me. Like, it really was, it's so healing just to focus on the breath and bring your energy back to it. And then you can like make things happen right in the moment in your body, just using the breath. It's so crazy.
It is. I personally use my breathing when I'm driving.
Yeah.
All the time. Because that's 90% of the time when I'm driving, that's when I need to calm down the most.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to, when I first moved to Atlanta, the traffic here is like so bad. It's so bad. It's just like makes my blood boil. And I used to be so mad because I would spend 2 hours in traffic only living less than 10 miles away from work. And I'm like, why? Why is this happening? And then I did start to do some things to calm me down, like focusing on the breath. And then I would start to figure out how to enjoy my time in the car. So this is another way to reframe. So I started getting excited about my commutes because I started using them to listen to some podcasts that I didn't have time for otherwise. Yeah. And I could do a full hour-long episode, sometimes 1.5 on my commute. And then I started looking forward to my drive home to just zone out and listen to a podcast. And so that's another way to like reframe a negative experience to be something beneficial or enjoyable.
Yeah, it's amazing how you can actually, it seems hard, and and you know what, I won't lie, it is hard.
It is hard
to change your mindset. Like it takes patience, practice, trying different things. I mean, you know, we can give recommendations on what you can and can't do, but ultimately it's going to be a personal solution for yourself. But man, once you do like get that 30 days in or 45 days in, and you start to see progress, and you can change your mindset, and just changing your mindset will change your whole life. It's incredible.
Absolutely. I think it's the #1 biohack, and you guys are probably tired of hearing me say that, but the mind is so powerful. We can do anything with our mind. So if we're going to like focus on biohacking anything, we should focus on the mind first, and then we can do some of the other stuff. But you're right, it's really hard work at first. I will say it's hard work.
Yes.
But then it becomes subconsciously programmed, and then you can go on autopilot with positive behaviors instead of autopilot on negative behaviors. It's just a matter of taking yourself out of autopilot on those negative behaviors, those things that you've been programmed, those past traumas, those things that we feed on negative emotions sometimes. Like sometimes we feed on getting into that fight or flight way of being. Like we like it because it's kind of like a rush.
You feel alive.
Yeah, but we could feel that same rush in a lot more beneficial way by activating the positive feelings and the positive physiological cascade of positive thinking.
Yeah, and you know, our show, The Fit Mess, the whole premise behind it, and the reason that we call it The Fit Mess is because getting to that state or making yourself better, it's messy. Like it's painful, it's uncomfortable. You have to go through a little bit more negative in order to get there. Getting yourself out of that everyday routine it's hard to break habit, as when we're creatures of habit. But once you get past that, it's, you know, the floodgates can open.
Yeah. You know, it probably wasn't until I've been working on my health, and I've been biohacking like my physical health and like athletic performance for over 10 years since I became a runner, and that's been great. But it wasn't until a couple of years ago when I started biohacking my mind, when I turned the mirror towards myself and started looking inside for the answers, that's when my world became so much bigger. It's like the world expanded, the possibilities expanded, the possibilities actually became endless, and my whole life opened up, and that's when I found like my true calling. So I think if you can focus internally and try not to put so much effort and attention into the external, like what people are thinking about you, how people make you feel, how the things that happened outside of you are like make you feel crappy, how you don't have all the things that you want, and how you don't have the money that you want, and how you don't have the career that you want. How about thinking about what you do have, and what can you look at inside that you can improve, and all these other things externally will just come from that.
Yep. And I was reminded this week that, I mean, it takes vulnerability to do this.
Yeah.
Like you've got to crack open and look at things that you might not want to look at, and admit that you have shortcomings. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not perfect? What?
The thing that was hard for me is I knew I wasn't perfect. I just didn't want anybody else to know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's even harder. Like talking about your imperfections.
It's so hard.
It is, but I've found that once you learn to accept that you're not perfect and that you're okay with it, like being okay with it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
And, you know, as a guy, like we're not supposed to be vulnerable. We're not supposed to be, emotional or anything like that. But I get power and motivation from being vulnerable and looking at that side of myself now, because like, I'm never going to improve unless I do.
Yeah. We were just talking about examples for me, and if I have children, I want a father to be an example of the man that I think all men should be, which is open and vulnerable and still a strong leader, but be emotionally intelligent and available to their children, to their family, but also to everyone. Like the greatest leaders I know are so heart-centered and open to everyone, and they're not closed off and masculine and just like, shut off to people. They share their emotions, and they let people know that they're not perfect, which is such a great aspect, of life, is just to share, like, hey, here's my crap. Like, it's okay if you see it. I also don't care if you judge me for it, but I also know you have crap, so why don't we just share our crap?
Exactly. Because you know what? Someone else might be taking care of their stuff in a way that you've never thought of before.
Yeah.
And that could immensely help you.
Yeah, we were also talking about Iceland, and my friends who were there, I see Nick is on. Hey, Nick. He is such an amazing example of a leader, a great leader, and a great man who's so
reminded this week that, I mean, it takes vulnerability to do this.
Yeah.
Like you've got to crack open and look at things that you might not want to look at, and admit that you have shortcomings. Like, I'm not perfect? What?
The thing that was hard for me is I knew I wasn't perfect. I just didn't want anybody else to know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's even harder. Like talking about your imperfections.
It's so hard.
It is, but I've found that once you learn to accept that you're not perfect and that you're okay with it, like being okay with it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
And, as a guy, like we're not supposed to be vulnerable. We're not supposed to be, emotional or anything like that. But I get power and motivation from being vulnerable and looking at that side of myself now, because like, I'm never going to improve unless I do.
Yeah. We were just talking about examples for me, and if I have children, I want a father to be an example of the man that I think all men should be, which is open and vulnerable and still a strong leader, but be emotionally intelligent and available to their children, to their family, but also to everyone. Like the greatest leaders I know are so heart-centered and open to everyone, and they're they're not closed off and masculine and just like, shut off to people. They share their emotions, and they let people know that they're not perfect, which is such a great aspect, of life, is just to share, like, hey, here's my crap. Like, it's okay if you see it. I also don't care if you judge me for it, but I also know you have crap, so why don't we just share our crap?
Exactly. Because you know what? Someone else might be taking care of their stuff in a way that you've never thought of before, and that could immensely help you.
Yeah, we were also talking about Iceland, and my friends who were there, I see Nick is on. Hey, Nick. He is such an amazing example of a leader, a great leader, and a great man who's so vulnerable and open, but also just like he's got his shit together. He knows what he needs to do. He has his priorities right, but he also is not afraid to like share his shit with people and just like let it be okay that he has that. And it's just amazing. This is when we were in Iceland, we just all really connected over our shit. Like we just shared it, and we were just like, this is how it is. None of us are perfect. And you realize and you grow tools from looking at other people and how they got through their experiences, how they're currently dealing with it. You come up with new ideas. You're able to like link arms and like, rise together when you share your vulnerability. Absolutely.
And I just spent a week at a conference for work, and I was blown away that this was like a corporate event, and they brought in somebody to talk about being vulnerable and having emotional intelligence in the corporate environment. And it didn't go over well, I think, with a lot of the male participants, which was sad, but not surprising, of course. But it's when you can get like-minded people in the same room though and talking about this stuff, like the motivation factor just increases tenfold. It's great.
Oh yeah. And that's what, so the Fit Mess podcast and the Biocurious podcast, this is our goal, is to bring like-minded people together to share things that will be useful and beneficial for all of us. Even though I'm considered an expert in the health sciences, I learn so much by connecting with other people, whether they have a degree or not. Just learning how they apply these things in their life is so it's just so valuable to learn from other people and their experiences, and then hear about their challenges, how they got through it, and that gives me ideas for how I can get through my stuff, or just tells me that it's okay that I'm also having that struggle. And so it's really powerful to bring people together. And so we're thinking about the two podcasts and how we can link arms together, since we have a similar goal, and bring people together. And so we're thinking about some cool ideas for different events where we can bring some of our audiences all together to share these experiences with each other and connect and benefit from that human connection and vulnerability. And so we hope that some of you will be interested in connecting with us, and we have some ideas. So we'll be sharing those with you guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we're always open to other ideas too.
Absolutely. So I'm just looking through some comments here. Oh yeah. So taking time to be in service of others in hopes of flipping it. That is exactly, what we aim to do with the podcasts and our platforms, and, just connecting with all of you. Let's see. Just want to make sure I can see people's comments before we hop off. Thank you guys for joining. And definitely check out the Fit Mess podcast. Like I said, I was a guest on their podcast. And that they are doing some really cool work and have had some amazing guests on their podcast, including, I think you had Dave Asprey on. And some other really big biohackers they've had on their podcast. So a good one to check into. And again, it's these two guys who are also working through their own things and sharing their experiences and speaking with experts in the field. So it's a really cool framework to learn from. And so I hope you guys check in on that podcast. And then, keep an eye out for the Biocurious podcast too, because we have a lot of cool things going on in this space. And I think on both podcasts, we'll announce what these different opportunities will be for all of us to get together and share more with each other and be vulnerable together.
Yes.
So we had a question, where can I find these podcasts? If you go on to any podcast platform and you search The Fit Mess, you will find, yours is on every...
It's available anywhere you can get podcasts at The Fit Mess, or you can just go to the website, thefitmess.com. There's links to it there. Mm-hmm. And very clearly, The Fit Mess, it's messy.
Yeah. And then my podcast, a lot of you guys know, is called Biocurious. If you just search Biocurious on any of the podcast platforms, you'll find it. You'll see a picture of me. And also, if you go through my Instagram page, if you go through the link in my bio, there's a link to the podcast from there as well. So you can go that way, or you can just go on to any of your platforms and search The Fit Mess or Biocurious. You'll find both podcasts. Subscribe to both, because that's how we grow and we reach more of you. And share it with your friends, and let's build our network, and then we can do more cool things all together, and hopefully some live events too. It's called The Fit Mess, like messy room. And so definitely check that out. Hi guys. So we're about to hop off, but we love you all. Thank you for being here. We want to have these discussions with you guys. So look out for opportunities to do that. We'll have more for you.
Thanks everyone.
Bye guys.
Bye.